Hello, this is AstrologyNewsReport.com with your hosts, David Anton Savage and Ron Berger.
Now we go to our third segment of this week's report, People in the News, where we will analyze the Vedic astrology birth chart of a newsworthy person or thing.
This week we analyzed the birth chart of the Affordable Care Act.
Oh boy.
Can we do such a thing, Ron?
Yeah, this may seem a bit odd at first. Can a law have a birth chart? Well, yes. In Vedic astrology, birth charts are not limited to just people. We can do the birth chart for a country, we can do the birth chart for a business, and even for a particular event.
In fact, in India, they don't open a business without doing such calculations.
Yeah, traditional India, they'll always do
Yeah.
the chart for opening. Yeah.
Yes. Well, in any case, there's even a special predictive technique in Vedic astrology for determining the outcome of an action, which is used beforehand to choose the best time to act. It's called a Muhurta chart. Anyway, in this case, we are using the White House signing ceremony on March 23rd, 2013 at approximately 11:30 a.m. as the birth of what is now commonly referred to as Obamacare. So this becomes the birth chart for Obamacare, which we will now analyze to determine the destiny of what is being referred to as Obama's signature legislation, his mark on presidential history.
Yes, this chart looks correct, especially when you consider how much trouble it caused during its gestation and how more it spawned as soon as it was born.
And right off the bat, you see that this is a double Gemini chart, since the rising sign and the moon, the planet of the emotional mind, are both in the first house of the most dualistic of all signs in the zodiac. And right away, we have seen the main energy for this event manifesting as supporters versus opponents. No sooner had the ink dried on the bill, lawsuits aplenty were being filed.
And notice that the rising nakshatra, the lunar sign on the ascendant, is Ardra, the sign associated with Rudra, who is the god of storms. And certainly this law has stirred up quite a tempest.
And Adra is also known as the sign of catharsis, of transformation. What else in the chart suggests controversy? Surely the sixth house must be involved. The sixth house is the house of struggle and difficulty.
Well, David, let's take a look at the sixth house then. The sign here is Scorpio, and its ruler Mars is placed in the second house, where it is debilitated. In other words, potentially more malefic than usual. Mars is the planet of controversy, and the second house is the house of money. And what was the big sticking point with Obamacare? The money. How to pay for it, who pays for it, how much, and on and on and on.
The second house is also values. Certainly the whole question of values was a big deal and is a big deal. So Mars, the planet of fighting and the ruler of the sixth house of struggle, made a hash out of the house of values.
Yeah, and yet this chart has some notable strength too. There's quite a powerful 10th house, the 10th house of public actions, which is also the 10th house of success. There are no less than 4 planets in the 10th, in the sign Pisces, which is the sign of empathy and support. And the main idea here was to do something about the abysmal healthcare situation for the poor of this country.
Something that's been talked about for 70 years now.
Yeah.
Well, let's go on to another aspect of this. It's very important. The ruler of the first house is Mercury, which joins the planet of government, the sun, who rules the third house of efforts, in the 10th house of success. Joining the sun and Mercury is an exalted Venus, representing the 12th house of institutions such as hospitals. And let's not forget to mention Uranus is in the mix as well. It is the planet of the revolutionary.
And strange as it may seem, universal health care, even a somewhat defective version of it, is revolutionary here in America. Something which is taken for granted for Europeans is actually a controversial, edgy issue here in the States.
Yes, this may come as shocking news to my fellow Americans, but we are viewed as insane by the rest of the modern industrialized world because of this dust-up over healthcare.
Yeah. Well, before leaving our 10th house analysis, let's take notice of Saturn, the planet of delay, occupying the 4th house and sending its powerful aspect onto the 10th and all those planets. Saturn is also representing the 8th house of the chart, the house of chronic problems, adding yet more evil to its influence.
In the 4th house position, Saturn is very much involved with the planet Mercury, the ruler of the chart.
A good point, which helps us evaluate the outcome. Not only is Saturn in Mercury's sign Virgo, Saturn and Mercury are in mutual aspect to each other, since Mercury is in Pisces, the sign opposite to Virgo. Finally, Saturn is casting its special 10th house aspect onto the 1st house, Gemini, ruled by Mercury. Certainly Saturn, the planet of delay, has a lot to say about the implementation of this law and continues to make trouble even now.
And yet, Saturn is also the significator of longevity and endurance. So we see that Saturn will actually help Obamacare last in the long run.
This is true. All right, continuing on in another sector of the chart, it is interesting to notice that Jupiter, the planet of law, is in the 9th house of courts. The Affordable Care Act had to be confirmed as constitutional by the Supreme Court not too long after it was signed into law by President Obama. And yet, even that did not settle the controversy.
So, Ron, what can you say about the future of the Affordable Care Act based on the birth chart of the event? Does the planetary period system apply to the chart of a law?
Yeah, sure. And we can see that Obamacare starts its life in a Rahu major period. And Rahu is a difficult energy to handle. It is the significator of obsession, of transformation, and of the future, but it's also causing obscuring because it's an eclipse point. In other words, it can cause confusion. And the Rahu major period for the Affordable Care Act has still quite a few more years yet to run. After the Rahu major period in 2021, the Jupiter major period begins, just a scant 8 years into the future. Jupiter rules the 10th house of success in this chart, and it is very well placed in the 9th house of destiny, which would seem to secure the Affordable Care Act as part of America's future.
Yeah, it may seem a long way off, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not too long term.
Yeah.
Adding all this up leads us to the conclusion that Obamacare will be fraught with problems for several years to come before it becomes part of the national fabric, as have other initially controversial major federal programs, Social Security being an example.
It's going to be a long slog through mucky muck before this whole thing gets accepted.
Of course, this prediction is made with the assumption that larger circumstantial karma does not come into play, like the USA balkanizing itself into smaller ruling regions in the future.
What are you suggesting? All right, anyway, a worthy topic, but let's hold off on speculating about major game changers for now, especially since we are out of time.